Unit 1, Lesson 1 of the Civil 3D 2010 education curriculum addresses the drawing environment. In this unit there are 8 exercises. The first exercise involves navigating the drawing environment. The second exercise involves reviewing AutoCAD options and Civil 3D drawing settings. The third exercise addresses object creation such as lines, arcs, polylines, and blocks. Exercise 4 addresses the modification or the editing of objects. Exercise 5, you discuss navigating the Civil 3D drawing environment with commands such as zoom and pan. Exercise 6 discusses creating blocks and using external references. Exercise 7 addresses working with layouts and viewports for creating sheets. And Lesson 1 ends with Exercise 8, which discusses plotting and engineering drawing to scale. In Exercise 1, the first discussion is on ribbons and panels. And this is the primary interface in Civil 3D 2010, where you can access your commands. So if we were to flip back to Civil 3D 2010 as an example, this is the ribbon. This is called a static ribbon. These ribbons, the static ribbons, are always there, your standard ribbons. Each tab on the ribbon has a number of commands. So if we were to look at the components of a ribbon, we have the tabs, which display commands specific to certain tasks such as analyze or analysis, viewing, managing, that sort of thing. And then on each tab you have panels. So on the Home tab we have the Palettes panel, we have the Create Ground Data panel, and the Create Design panel. And then on each panel you have a number of commands. Note that a panel can be expanded and locked open. If we want to leave that panel open, for instance, we're repeating a command here a number of times. And you can control the display of the ribbon with this down arrow, so we can minimize it just to the panels. We can click that again, and then you have the actual tabs. So when you click on a tab, it will just display the ribbon temporarily, and then you have the full view, which is always going to display the ribbons. So that's a static ribbon. And you also have contextual ribbons, which means that when you grip an object in Civil 3D, the contextual ribbon will display information or commands specific to that selected object. And that works with all Civil 3D objects. So let's just flip back to the PowerPoint here. You also have toolbars in Civil 3D to work with. And if we were to keep going through here, workspaces, a really important component of the software. The workspace is the configuration of the user interface. And if we were to flip back to Civil 3D, you can change your workspace here. So right now the workspace is showing commands that are for Civil 3D. However, if we wanted to look at some of the 2D drafting and annotation related commands, we could change our workspace. And essentially what happens is that the workspace changes the user interface based on the tasks that you're wanting to perform. If we change to a geospatial workspace, you will see commands that are now specific to geospatial analysis. And if we were to change to a 3D modeling workspace, you're going to see commands that are specific to 3D modeling tasks. Okay, so one thing that you want to be able to do is customize your workspace settings and turn on automatically save workspace changes, because the workspace is going to account for the position of windows and the layout of all of the interface items. So that's something very important to do. And you can also use the customize command here to go into your CUI, which is customize user interface, and create your own workspaces. So it's recommended is to leave these workspaces intact, and if you're wanting to make a copy of the Civil 3D workspace, Perhaps you now make a copy of this workspace by using the Save Current As command and calling this workspace My C3D Workspace. And that way you will leave the workspaces that come with the software intact, and you can then edit this at your will. The application menu is for drawing access and creation, and that is up here. So this is your application menu, so you have a number of commands here for opening, creating new drawings, saving, exporting data to different formats, printing, publishing, some drawing utilities such as looking at drawing settings, units, drawing properties. And there's a number of tools. We won't get into this, but for 3D drawing, so creating lines, arcs, polylines, text, and blocks, the exercise steps you through if you're wanting some more of those basic AutoCAD skills. Drawing navigation such as zooming and panning. These are all going to be on the View tab of the ribbon, and you have a number of different panning and zooming and drawing navigation options here. Exercise 2 discusses AutoCAD options and drawing settings. So if we click back to AutoCAD or Civil 3D again, if you right-click anywhere in the drawing area without having an object selected and go to Options, you now have all of your paths for drawing templates, for example. Okay, so drawing template file location, this is something that should be configured. Your display tab is where we can configure colors. So for example, if you don't want the background color to be white, we can select a color and change the color here to be color 9. Okay, so we change the background color. Open and save for auto saving. This is a good thing to turn on. Plotting and publishing settings. Some system settings, user preferences for right-click customization. Some drafting settings, and we can expand the dialog box here. Some graphical selection settings as well here. So a number of settings and options, and those are all saved in your user profile. We discussed the colors, objects and drawing settings, either drafting settings, so your default snapping and polar track and object snapping, these can be set, and you're typically going to change a lot of these when you're working through an application or a project, but in drawing settings you can, or in AutoCAD options you can adjust these settings. And you can also specify your units of measurement. That's important as well, just so that when you insert blocks, you may wish to scale those blocks depending on the scale that they were and the units that they were initially created at. Exercise 3 addresses object creation and specifically gets into snapping. So object snapping is the ability to draw a line from the end point of another line, or the midpoint of a line, or from the center of a circle. It allows you to physically locate objects based on tying into a specific location on another object. And lessons on just creating lines, text, arcs, blocks, and polylines. Also, layers are discussed in exercise 3. Obviously a very important component of AutoCAD. If I type LA on the command line, objects are all placed on layers, and it's very good to keep your drawings organized and to drive the display of your objects from the layers that they're on. So that way, if you need to change the layer, if you change the layer color, all the objects on that layer will have will reflect that updated layer color. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Exercise 3 also deals with text sizes and font sizes, text styles, the modification of objects, and using grips. So this is quite handy. All objects have grips. So if we were to grip this line here, you can use grips to position a line. Okay. Arc will have a different set of grips that allow you to change the length of that arc, change the radius of the arc, or the position of the arc. change the radius of the arc, that sort of thing. So every object has a different set of grips on it that allow you to manipulate that object. And Civil 3D objects actually have grips as well. And points are quite unique because they have some interesting grips. This one allows you to rotate the point. This one allows you to move the point, which updates the coordinates. This one here pulls the point into drag state display property. And this one here toggles the sub-items. So they take a bit of getting used to, but the grips are a great way to graphically manipulate the data in your drawing. Exercise 5 discusses navigating the drawing environment in the third dimension using preset views in the navigation toolbar. And we'll just flip over here quickly. That would be under the View tab. You've got a number of preset views for 3D visualization. Previous views, name views, and also visual styles for rendering and how you want to display the data in 3D. Exercise 6 addresses block definition. So a block is essentially an item that's defined that contains a number of lines, arcs, or any other AutoCAD entities. So in this case, it's a fire hydrant block. So if I was back to the drawing here, and if I did an AutoCAD insert with I on the command line, you can see we have a number of blocks. If I chose the fire hydrant block, I can specify the location on screen for insertion. And if I drop that in and we zoom in with the wheel, you can see that this is an actual block called fire hydrant that consists of a number of different entities. So lines and arcs, and they're just assembled together to create a block. So that's useful for standard symbols, and as you can see in this particular drawing, there are a number of blocks defined, and there's a preview window that shows you all of the different blocks. So very handy part of AutoCAD to understand blocks. External references are useful for sharing data, sharing one drawing data amongst other drawings. So for example, a base plan of a civil engineering drawing that shows existing condition might be externally referenced into a number of other design drawings. And the last two exercises in Lesson 1 address layouts and viewports. So configuring your paper space layout tabs with a border, and being able to create a viewport in that to view the model. We'll just have a quick look at that. So if I go into my drawing here again, I can click on a layout, and in this layout you can see there's a viewport. So if I jump into this viewport, I can now pan and navigate in that viewport, and I can also insert a block, or I can create a title block around that. And there's my title block, and I could have my information for the drawing and the municipality or the organization we're working with. And then when you right click on a layout, you can go into your page setup manager, and then if I modify that, this is where we can configure our plotting device, our paper size. So if we went to a D size sheet here and click OK and close, there's a D size sheet. So now we can just erase that border, but I can take this viewport object and make this a bit bigger. And then if I double click, you can see I'm now in the viewport, and I can navigate in that viewport. I can adjust the zoom scale in that viewport. And if I click a viewport and right click and look at AutoCAD properties, the properties window will display the scale of that viewport. So that's how you control plotting and scaling in viewports in AutoCAD. And this is what's discussed in exercise 8. So, and here's your the viewport scale that we just looked at. So that concludes the discussion on Unit 1, Lesson 1. Once again, it's a good unit to go through if you want to brush up your base AutoCAD skills and take it from there. So be sure to watch the rest of the presentations to learn more about the various lessons in this education curriculum.